I think you come away from this documentary appreciating just the sheer attraction that this guy was, and the massive amount of pain he was in. Now, as an attraction, it's funny because the wrestling business was just so different back then. It was territorial, and guys would, Andre would be in one territory for a while, and they said you couldn't keep him there for very long because after a while, first of all, he's limited in what he can do. And, when you see this freak show attraction, which is pretty much what they looked at him as, after a while, if you see him every single week, every single month, it just becomes, old hand or old hat, I guess, as the expression goes. So they would bounce him around. He would go from place to place, and he was always this big attraction. Andre today would not be nearly as big of a star as he was back then. If Andre came along now, first of all, there have been people that have had the disease that he's had, who are as big and even bigger and taller than Andre was. For all the exaggerations about his height, he wasn't 7'4". Maybe he was 7'1", maybe he was 6'11". He wasn't 7'4". That was an exaggeration. Even Vince McMahon at one point in the documentary says, well, he probably wasn't 7'4". He may have been 7'1". I don't know. He kind of grumbles, like he doesn't really want to talk about it, but he kind of reluctantly admits that it was bullshit. So today, though, right? We've seen people bigger than Andre. And can you imagine Andre being on television every single week? Unless Andre had like a Brock Lesnar type deal. It's kind of like Big Show. Big Show is also this larger-than-life attraction. But he means nothing. Because he was on television. He's been on television every single week for 15 years now. So the way they treat these guys now, and as much television as they have, Andre coming along now, if he even, would make it to the main roster, he wouldn't be special. After 3 weeks, he would be just another person. And people would chant, "You can't wrestle" at him. And hurt his feelings. So, just for that era, he was the perfect attraction. The amount of pain he was in his later years, you just can't help but feel badly for the guy. Even though they make it very clear he made the choice not to have the surgery that guys like Big Show had and Lars Sullivan. He was out of action for a while. I believe he had the same surgery for the same condition that Andre had, the acromegaly. He opted not to. Once he found out what he had and that it could be treated, Andre, and Tim White even said this in the documentary, he was very fearful that it could negatively affect his wrestling career. He did not want to do anything that would somehow make him not as special of an attraction, and so he opted not to have the surgery. Now, it would not have reversed the condition. It wouldn't have fixed the condition. It would have stopped the advancement of the condition. And it's very likely he would have avoided a lot of the problems and pain he had later in life, and maybe he would have lived into his 50s and 60s. That was his choice. He knew the choice that he was making. Now, that doesn't mean it's still not sad, but, it's sad to a point. He made his choice, and, he had to deal with the consequences of that choice. And, unfortunately, those consequences were a lot of pain and suffering. The thing about it, though, I think about that, and I'm like, he was already a big guy at that point. I don't really think he got much bigger. Maybe his features got a little more warped, like his hands and his forehead and stuff like that. But, if anything, he got shorter as the years went on. I think he was taller probably in the 70s and the early 80s than he was in the late 80s. Especially, when you have back surgery and stuff like that, you kind of shrink a little bit. So I look at that and I say, I don't know what he's talking about. He could have had the surgery and he still would have been Andre the Giant. But I guess he was just very, fearful about losing what made him unique.